So let's do this waterfall image. So let's start with very basic kind of starting point. Let's try what it does to what's the adaptive. It was adaptive somewhere. Here, adaptive color. So yeah, it's kind of like just a starting point. It's you don't have to. I like the way. So I think it's a little bit overexposed. So maybe we can do adaptive color, but reduce the intensity, the amount of that profile, and then this way it's okay. Now we can bring up the shadows a little more, so we don't have this. Now, okay, so we have this water, right? You see, it's a little bit. It's generally nice, but this area in the middle is kind of too bright because we're starting to lose details. And maybe we want to add contrast just to the water, so to emphasize the flow lines and stuff like that. So one way to do it would be, let's go to masking, choose a radial gradient. We're gonna do radial gradient over the central area. Right? Now, I don't want to work on the entire central area. I only want to work on the water, right? And the way to do it is go to the mask, right click, intersect mask, the luminance range, and then we can choose this square of the water. And you see that it chose the water out of that central circle. And you can play with the luminance mask on luminance range on the right. It appears here. You can make it to include a little bit darker areas if you don't want it to be like super sharp, super exact. And you can play with how feathered the mask is. So kind of. But let's say you chose. And now we want to increase contrast here. We want to maybe bring down the highlights a little bit. Maybe we want to go add texture. So all the flow lines, we can see them. Maybe not too much, but a little bit. Maybe add whites a little bit, so it really looks white. And maybe we want to cool it down a little bit, so it has this, as it's if it's not in direct light, so the water is kind of has this bluish tinge, right? So kind of something like that. Now I still see that this area in the middle of the waterfall is too bright, and there are some areas on the waterfall itself that maybe I don't want to. So let's do brush, reduce exposure a little bit, and keep the brush at flow 25, let's say. We don't need auto mask because because there is no sharp borders, and then we can just brush it here a little bit and brush a little bit on the areas that are overexposed to bring them down in terms of exposure, maybe a little bit here. Okay, so it's more evenly exposed, and we see the details even in the brighter spots. Okay, so now let's add. You can see here on the top right corner, that's where the light was. That's the top right corner was where the sun was coming from. And from this angle, you can't see the sky, obviously, but there was light. And let's emphasize that light. Let's add sunlight to our image. So I'm going to create another mask, do a radial gradient. I'm going to minimize the image to 6.3% so I can see the entire image. And I'm going to do the 100% feather. So it's going to be nice and soft. And this is going to be this is the direction of the light was in reality. And now we can increase back to the size. So, and then I want to increase the exposure, maybe elongate it a little bit. Negative dehaze to kind of create this slightly hazy atmosphere, because farther from the eye and when there is some glow from the light, it's negative. You need negative dehaze to do it. Then clarity, you can reduce clarity a little bit. reduce contrast a little bit, and then warm it up quite a bit because it's sunlight, right? Maybe bring down the highlights a little bit here in the sky, and you can even, if you really want to, you can even add a color here of the sunlight. So at the bottom of your mask, there is a color that you can add. It will blend it in with the color, so it's more yellowish, more or orange red, like from the sun. Okay, and then you can do it. You can maybe add a little bit of whites, kind of a little bit play. So now this is generally okay, but we don't want that sunlight applied to dark areas, right? Because the sun didn't fall here on this side, right? It only came through the window. So the way to do it again is to right click on the mask, intersect mask with, let's do again, luminance range, and then we'll remove the darks. And you can see if we do an overlay, it deselects these front areas. And if it didn't deselect completely, then you can go to the mask, subtract, do a brush, for example, small brush. Here I would like to auto mask, so I would like to remove the trees, maybe increase the flow so I don't need to brush as much, and just brush these areas that I don't want affected. Okay, so now if you look at the mask here, the mask doesn't appear as an entire oval. You see these black areas that are not affected. So okay, and then we can actually, the mask now, we can actually increase how much we want. That's too much, too bright, but we can do more than one actually, so kind of play with it. Now, okay, so this is okay. Now I want to brighten up a little bit these shadows. I don't want to bring out the shadows everywhere, but I want to bring some of them out. So I do a brush, again, low flow. So if we want more effect, we do it several times, and then bring up shadows, and then just brush it where I want some of those details. And you can do it like strong, and then if it's too strong, you can always reduce the amount affected. So kind of brush it up here a little bit, brush it a little bit here. So you start seeing the details in the shadows, right? And then we didn't do anything else. We just brought up the shadows in those areas that are affected. Okay. Now, generally speaking, in most cases here, I would also add a vignette. So our central area, right? We want it to be kind of brighter, so our eyes drawn to it. So I would do a radial gradient. This time it doesn't have to be as soft. It's actually about 50% feather is okay. And then again, we can reduce the size so we can control see where this oval goes, right? And then, so this is right now, the way it's selected, the center is going to be affected. So we don't want that. We want the vignette. So we want to go here on the right and do invert. And then you see only the corners are affected. And it's going to be gradual between the inner circle and the outer circle. So if we just reduce the exposure a little bit, kind of, so you can see it. If you overdo it, it's going to be quite strong. So, but we don't want that too much. Generally, you want your vignette to be invisible, basically. So if you can tell there is a vignette, that's bad. So it needs to be anything that you do to your image, at least in my philosophy. You want it to be subtle, so it's not. If you want a vignette, then it needs to be subtle, so it's not seen. Okay, so what else? Let's brighten up the middle even more. So we kind of there are several ways to do it. You can increase the overall exposure and then just do stronger vignette at the corners, or you can, if you want different sizes, let's say we want soft a little bit, and we want to increase a little bit to make it a little brighter. Need to be careful because here we have our water is already quite bright, so Maybe just a little bit, I don't know. Bring down the highlights so we don't overexpose the water. Okay, what else? So this area of water is a little bit bright for me. I want to darken it a little bit. So we emphasize the waterfall. So one way to do it is, let's do linear gradient on the bottom of the image. Now maybe the linear gradient is maybe not the best option here, because it's not really straight. Uh, yeah, let's do another one. Let's do a radial gradient instead. So let's reduce further. Kind of make it more or less the size of this area that I want to darken, right? And then bring down the exposure a little bit. So this way, the area is kind of okay. Now, what I do want to do maybe is to bring out these whites of the foam on the surface. So one way to do it would be to take a brush. Now we don't need auto mask, and I want to just bring up the whites. So this way, only the whites will of the image gonna be changed. So if we brush, and maybe we can do increase highlights, okay? And then also maybe on the previous one that we darkened it, maybe increase contrast a little bit, so it will bring down the dark areas darker and bright areas brighter. Maybe add a little bit of clarity, a little bit of the haze. So this will emphasize the contrast between the water and the whites. So your whites are kind of creating leading line and emphasized. Okay. Uh, so this is kind of more or less what I would do with this image. You can also do, I think I mentioned at one point, if you go to the basic one, you can add like a more autumn feel to it. The way to do it, go to color mixer, go to hue, make your oranges towards the reds, your yellows to the left, and your greens towards the left. And this way you can see that the colors hues in your image kind of change more towards autumn colors. And you can also go to saturation, increase the saturation of the yellows and maybe oranges, kind of to emphasize, instead of doing overall vibrance or saturation, just specific colors. And then also you can also play with the luminance. So the luminance is the brightness of the different colors. So yellow, obviously there is a lot of yellow here. Kind of you can do that, maybe darken the greens a little bit, stuff like that. So this is a more autumn feel to the same image, kind of take it to a warmer place. We could have probably done it as a just go to overall and just change the in the basic change the temperature, that as well, kind of. But need to be careful, kind of not to overdo it. It's a stylistic choice, obviously here. The Before I did the color mixer, it was a more natural look. Now it's kind of a little more stylistic choice. So here is before and after.